Our story begins in a temple located at the highest point of the 9 heavens. An old man announces that the celestial venerable of 9 lives would finally achieve the path of a saint that day, and thus take his place above the heavens themselves. He tells everyone present that this was a blessing for all their people, and also a tremendous honor to witness such a legendary feat. Shortly after, the old man asks everyone to receive the celestial venerable of 9 lives, and declares the beginning of the tribulation. At that moment, a man appears accompanied by several extremely beautiful women, and of course the work immediately captures anyone's attention right from the start. Meanwhile, some people watching the event were commenting among themselves. One of them wondered why the celestial venerable of 9 lives was so arrogant in that way. The other replies that he had incredibly good luck with women, since those 8 empresses were literally the pinnacle of beauty and power. Even so, they realized they needed to take it seriously, because the Ascension Tribulation was a scene that no one would have the chance to see twice in their lifetime. Then they begin to explain his past. In the past, he fought against the monster race, exterminated demons, and became a simply invincible existence. And now, finally, that venerable was about to achieve his ultimate succession. One of the men even comments that he was eager to find out who would be crazy enough to try to stop it. Liu Ye then looks at the heavens and leaps an enormous height. But up there, an extremely imposing figure was already waiting for him. It was an old man holding a golden mirror while riding a mystical dragon. A woman immediately recognizes that man as the ancient modern celestial venerable, and reveals that this was the first great eternal tribulation. The people around are impressed, and say that the celestial venerable of 9 lives really did seem invincible, but Liu Ye himself shows no concern whatsoever. He already begins to prepare for battle, summoning a giant Susanoo-like form behind him before launching straight toward the dragon. The impact of the attack creates a flash so absurd it nearly blinds everyone. While the battle was happening, the work introduces some of the empresses. The woman in brown clothes was the Empress of Hadeling, named Yu He Hongling. The one in pink was the Vermilion Bird Empress, named Ji Ju Yan. The woman with black hair was the 9 heavens sword maiden, named Chu Ling, and she comments that they had been waiting for that moment for a long time. But suddenly, the old man in the sky uses an absurd technique and begins to clone himself. One of the elders watching everything immediately senses the danger and explains that this was a temporal technique. It allowed the clones to travel through multiple temporal dimensions to hunt Liu Ye across different timelines. In other words, if he died in any one of them, the damage would be fatal to his entire existence. Even so, Liu Ye merely smiles. He says he had already anticipated that move, and declares that in any timeline, he remains a completely invincible existence. The problem is that the old man keeps attacking relentlessly, and reveals that he had already eliminated versions of him across countless different temporal timelines. This finally leaves Liu Ye frightened. The old man then admits that Liu Ye's strength was truly extraordinary, but reveals that he had been infected by the yin-yang Dao devouring goo. It was precisely this that opened a gap he never would have noticed on his own. At that very instant, Liu Ye begins to find everything strange. He senses that someone had been scheming against him, and then looks at the empresses, but to his shock, all of them were smiling. In that instant, he understands the entire situation. The yin-yang Dao devouring goo had no form or substance, and could only be implanted during the union of yin and yang. In other words, the only people capable of doing such a thing were precisely the empresses themselves. The old man then says that the outcome of that battle was already decided. He even laments the fact that a man so upright and determined had ended up being betrayed by his own women, but one of the empresses coldly responds that she never felt any affection for him. According to her, they all stayed by his side only because they were intimidated by his tyrannical power, and had been forced to remain with him throughout all that time. Another woman even states that, if it were not for Liu Ye, she should have been by Feng Wuxi's side. The empresses then begin to accuse him of various things. They say he betrayed his ancestral masters, killed innocents, and transformed into a true demon. They declare they would personally send him on his final journey. Chu Ling herself says that when he died, they would all finally be free. But Liu Ye becomes completely outraged by this. He recalls that he always treated them all very well, and that, without him, none of them would have reached their current positions as empresses. Even so, he never imagined he would be betrayed in such a way. At that moment, a strange symbol appears in the sky, and from it the old man appears once again, telling Liu Ye to stop being distracted because the battle was not yet over. After receiving a direct blow, Liu Ye decides that if he was going to die, he would take everyone with him. Chu Ling immediately realizes what he intends to do, and tells everyone to run, but it is already too late. But the old man interrupts this and asks why so much misery. He admits that the battle had not yet been satisfying for him, and says that since Liu Ye had been poisoned by the goo, that victory was not truly honorable, so he decides to grant another chance. Shortly after, a massive vortex appears in the sky, and begins pulling both Liu Ye's soul and those of the 8 empresses. The old man then tells them to accompany the man through one more round of his life, and asks that, next time, he not disappoint him. It is then explained that a temporal reversal technique had been activated. Thanks to this, the souls of Liu Ye and the 8 empresses return 50 years into the past. When Liu Ye opens his eyes again. He stares at the mirror in front of him and wonders if he really returned through time. At the same time, Ling also awakens completely disoriented and is enormously startled to see him there. Observing her reaction, Ye immediately realizes that she also returned along with him. And for him, this was simply perfect. He even mentally thanks the old man for bringing everyone back. But already with a completely malicious gaze, he removes his boots and immediately orders Ling to wash his feet. She is completely indignant, but could do nothing in that situation. While washing his feet, Ye thinks he could kill her right there to avenge the betrayal. But in his view, death was too light a punishment. If he killed her now, she would not truly suffer. So he decides to let her live and experience personally just how miserable her future would be without him. After that, Ye explains that it was not a dream and that they truly did return through time. He tells her that the space-time reversal technique brought everyone back and says he still perfectly remembers every word she said that day. He then declares that, since freedom was what she wanted, she was free to get out of his sight. She was free. Shortly after, Ye summons the contract tablet and immediately destroys it, sending Ling back to the Chu Sword village. But Ling does not understand this and asks why. Having 9 lives, he chose to destroy precisely the first of them right away. But Ye simply replies that it is none of her business anymore. Ling then leaves, but not before threatening Ye, saying that since he returned from rebirth, he would definitely not have a good death in this new life. As she went on her way, she thought about having the innate sword body and believed that, if not for him, she certainly would have lived a much better life. She then begins to think of her father, her mother, and her brother, telling herself mentally that she was finally going home. But in Ye's view, that family was nothing good. He thinks that her father was a bastard, her mother a shameless woman, and her brother complete trash. Even feeling that Ling was worthy of pity, he believes that when she returned home, she would discover that place was in fact a true den of demons. He then decides that in this new life, he would have pity on no one. Without those 8 women holding him back, he was certain he would reach an even higher realm. But just at that moment, someone appears kicking the door with such force it nearly hits him in the face. When he looks properly, Ye immediately recognizes the person. It was the fairy Yu Haoling, who now wanted to be called only by her own name. She storms in completely furious, saying she was going to kill the protagonist, but she did not even have time to react, because Ye immediately trips her with a sweep and asks how she still had the nerve to try to hit him after everything. Shortly after, he lifts the woman in a very humiliating way and even takes advantage of that privileged view, while coldly warning her that if she did not fix the door she destroyed, he himself would kill her. Even in that situation, Yue Hongling insists that if it were not for him, she would be by Feng Wuxi's side. But Ye replies that if she wanted so badly to find that man, then she had better stay alive until then. Nearly fainting, she finally gives in and says she will fix the door. Then Ye simply throws her away and warns that when she comes back, if the door is still not fixed, she will certainly die. Even lying on the ground, Yue Hongling still protests, saying that they were Dao companions in a past life, and asking how he had the nerve to treat her that way. But Ye answers without hesitation that it all stayed in the past life. Now, everything would be completely different. The scene then shifts to a meeting between Ye and a white-haired woman named Bai Kulan. As soon as he arrives before her, he immediately pays his respects to the master. But Bai Kulan notices something strange at once, and asks why on earth he now had only 1 life. Completely awkward, Ye makes up an excuse, and says that during cultivation, he ended up merging his 9 lives into 1, but she does not seem very concerned about this. Instead, she reveals that she has already found a way to contain the power of chaos, and tells him to treat the events of the past life as if they were merely a dream. She then leaves an extremely serious warning. She says this must never happen again, and that if any sign of rebellion arose once more, she herself would purify the entire sect. Ye respectfully replies that he will keep those words in mind, but inside ends up thinking about something else. He wonders that if he had not transferred the chaos poison into himself in that past life, perhaps Bai Kulan would not have become the future Chaos Empress. After that, Ye realizes his cultivation had returned to the 5th level of Qi refinement, and understands he would need to cultivate everything from scratch again. He then opens his system and asks whether his partner was still around. The system immediately replies that it is present and asks what he desires. Ye then asks whether the system no longer needs energy, but the system responds that it has now become the celestial Tao itself, so energy is no longer necessary. The protagonist complains, saying that evolution was too cruel, and asks whether it was really necessary to condense the great eternal tribulation inside himself. But the system replies that it was inevitable, since as the host, it always needed to offer the most powerful path possible. Despite complaining, Ye gives thanks and decides to end the matter. He then asks to immediately begin cultivation. After some time, the scene shifts to the outside of the main gate of Chu Sword village. Ling was there, completely exhausted, slowly climbing the enormous staircase. The guards at the entrance are shocked to see the eldest young miss finally returning, but one of them ends up mistaking her for a beggar and asks how someone in that state appeared there, saying that Chu Sword village was not a place for just anyone to enter. Ling quickly responds that she is not a beggar and reveals that she herself was the former eldest young miss of the village. Even so, the man does not believe her and asks how someone dares to pretend to be the eldest young miss. Then Chu-Ling grabs his arm and asks him to look more carefully. She reminds him that, when she was little, he used to carry her on his back and always gave her sweets. But the man quickly pulls his arm away and says coldly that she was not even of the Chu family bloodline. He then asks why she had the nerve to come back. Inside, he even thinks that she must be an idiot, since she had finally managed to escape that demonic den and yet decided to return to seek her own death. But Chu-Ling still believed in the family. She replies that even though she was not a blood daughter, she was always treated as a true daughter by all of them. When the others realize who she really was, everyone is shocked. After all, the innate sword body had truly returned. At that moment, Chu Xiongtian, the master of Chu Sword Village, appears. He runs to her saying she has finally come home and declares that he missed her deeply. Beside him was his wife, Zheng Shuiyu, who also could not believe the return of her adopted daughter. She hugs Chu-Ling and asks where she had been all that time, scolding her for not even sending a letter and leaving everyone worried. Then Chu-Ling apologizes and explains that she had been held hostage by the Great Dao sect and that they had not allowed any contact with the outside. Shortly after, Chu Shifei also appears, the young master of the village and Chu-Ling's older brother. The young man begins to cry, moved by finally seeing his little sister back home. Meanwhile, the narrative returns once again to Lu Ye. It is then explained that the first heaven, where the Great Dao sect is located, was considered the weakest world in existence. The cultivation levels of that universe are also introduced, divided between postnatal, prenatal, Qi refinement, origin core, destroying infant, void refinement, and Dao integration. With all the experience accumulated from his past life, Lu Ye manages to advance from the 5th to the 9th level of Qi refinement in just 15 days. After that, he finally begins core formation. But something goes wrong. Suddenly, he begins coughing up blood without understanding why. He quickly realizes that only half of the true Qi in his body was participating in the core formation, while the other half remained completely rigid and immobile. The system then identifies the problem and announces that the celestial rigidity poison had been detected. At that moment, Lu Ye understands that this could only be the work of the empresses. They had not limited themselves to merely implanting the yin-yang Dao devouring goo in him. They had also added an extra layer of security to prevent him from reversing the situation even with 9 lives. But Lu Ye still had an ace up his sleeve. He then asks the system whether there is any way to break that poison. The system responds that there is always a solution. He simply needed to advance to the origin core realm and convert true Qi into true essence. That way the poison would naturally dissolve. The problem is that Lu Ye could not form the core using only half of his own power. He then remembers something important. If he could refine the legendary perfect return to origin pill, consuming it would be enough to advance directly to the origin core realm. But this pill was extremely rare. In his past life, he ended up giving it to Yu Hangling, but now, obviously, he would not make the same mistake. At that moment, a white bird appears out of nowhere and begins to announce information about the Great Dao sect. It reveals that the 29th generation disciple of the sect, Yue Hongling, also a disciple of Bai Qulan, took only 1 month and 17 days to complete Qi refinement. Shortly after, the bird makes a proposal to Lu Ye. It says that if he breaks the Qi refinement record of the Great Dao sect, he will receive as a reward a bottle of unmatched return to origin pills, along with 3 precious artifacts, a spot as a true legacy disciple, and 2 divine abilities of his choosing. Lu Ye thinks that this was exactly as expected of the future empress. Yue Hongling really did cultivate at an absurd speed. Even with a system by his side, he only managed to be 2 days faster than her. Shortly after, he simply leaps from the mountain. The system asks where he is going, but Lu Ye replies that he would head to the tomb of the Void Refinement Master to recover the return to origin pill that originally belonged to him. The scene then shifts, and it is explained that more than 1,000 kilometers to the west of the Great Dao sect, there exists an extremely ancient tomb. From the experience of his past life, Lu Ye knew that place would only be discovered a month from now. The greatest treasures hidden in that tomb were the fragmented scrolls of the 9 Lives Celestial Immortal Sutra, as well as the legendary Perfect Return to Origin pill. But a girl had already arrived at the location before him. She enters the tomb thinking that in this new life she was far ahead of Lu Ye, but as soon as she opens a notebook left inside, she finds an extremely provocative message written by him, basically insulting her and saying she had arrived too late. At that moment, the girl throws the book on the floor completely furious, calling him a damned wretch. But before she can do anything else, a light appears out of nowhere and traps her inside. The scene shifts again to 3 days later. The girl appears kicking Lu Ye's door and demanding he come out immediately. But before she can even finish the sentence, a golden hand appears out of nowhere and lands a violent blow on her, sending her flying. After getting up all bruised, she asks whether his mother never taught him that you should not hit women, even Even so, inside, she realizes this had already gone far beyond all limits, and thinks that even if she were to die out there, she would never surrender to him. She then completely changes her attitude. This time, she begins to speak in a much gentler tone, and politely asks whether he could open the door, please. But Lu Ye simply tells her to disappear from there as quickly as possible. Even so, the girl keeps insisting and asks whether he took the perfect return to origin pill inside the ancient tomb. But once again, Lu Ye attacks her mercilessly and sends her flying. Still, she continues insisting on the question, wanting to know whether he really took the pill, but he replies that he did not, and tells her to disappear from there. But just as she was preparing to attack Lu Ye again, someone suddenly appears. It was Bai Qiulan. At that moment, Yue Hongling completely changes her posture, sits on the floor crying, and begins complaining to her master that Lu Ye hit her. Then Bai Qiulan looks at him and asks how he dares to hit his own junior. But Lu Ye calmly replies that she entered his room without even knocking, and behaved without any manners whatsoever. Even so, Bai Qiulan continues saying this does not justify the aggression. She then asks Yue Hongling directly what she wanted so badly from Lu Ye. At that moment, Yue Hongling reveals that he took the perfect return to origin pill and says she wanted to make a trade, since that pill would be of no use to him. Then Bai Qiulan also mentions that, with Lu Ye's monstrous talent, he truly would not need that pill. For this reason, she asks why he does not simply hand it over to Yue Hongling. But the protagonist immediately replies that he also needs that pill. Yue Hongling then asks whether he really believes she cannot condense the sacred core without that item. But instead of responding, Lu Ye simply takes the pill out in front of both of them. Bai Qiulan even comments that he is finally being a good boy. But in the very next second, with a smile on his face, Lu Ye simply swallows the pill right then and there. This leaves Yue Hongling completely furious. She immediately swears she will condense the sacred core and rub it in his face. As for Bai Qiulan, she says she knows very well he still harbors a lot of resentment in his heart, but says that all of it is completely unnecessary. The scene then shifts to Chu Sword Mansion. At that moment, Chu Ling was eating a jade stem congee prepared by her adopted mother. The woman asks whether her daughter liked the food, and Chu Ling responds with gratitude, saying it was delicious. She also mentions that her adopted mother always treated her better than anyone in the world, and promises that in this new life, she would never again abandon her father and mother. But the adopted mother asks whether she really considers them better than her biological parents. Then Chu Ling responds that her true parents disappeared shortly after she was born, and asks how she could possibly consider those people her true father and mother. After that, her adopted mother simply gets up and says she does not want to talk about that subject anymore, asking the girl to rest a little. But inside, the woman was practically celebrating like a mad woman, thinking they were finally saved. A short time later, Chu Ling begins to feel an overwhelming fatigue. She lies down on the bed completely drowsy and begins to wonder why she is feeling that way. She then tries to circulate the Great Massacre Sword Sutra to analyze her own body, and it is at that moment that she realizes the truth. She had been poisoned. Immediately, Chu Ling begins to suspect the jade stem congee, but she finds this impossible herself, since it was her own adopted mother who prepared the meal with her own hands. At that instant, someone knocks on the door and she quickly covers herself. Shortly after, her mother herself enters the room and coldly reveals that the poison had already taken effect and that they could finally begin the plan. Beside her, Chu Shifei praises his mother, saying she was extremely intelligent and cunning. The woman then orders them to immediately take Chu Ling away to deliver her to the old ancestor. The scene shifts once again. Outside, some men were carrying an unconscious Chu Ling as they made their way. Meanwhile, Chu Xiongtian asks a subordinate whether he had already dealt with Xu Shi. The subordinate then coldly replies that everything had already been handled and that no witnesses were left alive. And Chu Xiongtian says that is excellent, because a simple servant nearly ruined all their family plans. He mentions that if the girl had not returned out of nowhere just to die, Chu Shifei would certainly have become the sword sacrifice. He then uses that as a lesson, telling his son to stop living drunk like a bum. Chu Shifei replies that he promises to dedicate himself much more to cultivation from now on. And hearing all that conversation, Chu Ling finally realizes she was raised that way only to serve as a sacrifice. Even so, Chu Shifei still asks that since she is going to die anyway, why can they not have a little fun with her first? But his father immediately pulls his ear and says that is disgusting, besides the fact that she is technically his sister. It is at this moment that Chu Ling understands her true parents were killed by those people. The adopted mother even asks whether her son cannot spend half an hour alone with her, but Chu Xiongten refuses immediately. He explains that if the ancestral sword refinement is delayed, the entire Chu family will pay a very steep price. At that instant, Chu Ling begins to realize the true reason Lu Ye never let her return home. The scene then shows a memory of the girl meditating in exactly his favorite pose, and it was not a coincidence. Back then, she begged to visit her family, family, but Lu Ye always said those were not her biological parents, so there was no reason for such hurry. Even so, Chu Ling defended the adoptive family, saying they treated her better than her own blood parents. She even questioned how Lu Ye could speak of them that way. In the end, he would only reply that it was fine, because when the sword was ready, he himself would take her home. But the girl never fully believed that, since it made no sense for a sword to take so long to be refined. But when she finally managed to return, she found the entire temple in flames. At that moment, she completely blamed Lu Ye, thinking all of that happened because he delayed her return for so long. But now, in the present, she finally understands that the sword he always spoke of was precisely that demonic sword. While all of this was happening, Lu Ye was watching the scene from beside his system. He even wonders how someone who had already returned from the realm of the Great Empress could be brought down by such a weak drug. The system then asks whether he intends to save her, but Lu Ye replies he is enjoying watching her in that state. Besides, she did not need his help. Shortly after, Chu Ling is taken to the sword forge, where the entire Chu family was kneeling before an old ancestor called Chu Kangsheng. He was the ancestor of Chu Sword Mansion, and upon seeing the girl, says this is excellent. He then orders her to be delivered immediately. He also asks the adopted father and mother to remain there to witness together the final ceremony of the demonic sword. At that instant, a sword surrounded by fire appears before him. The old man explains that that demonic sword carried more than 30 years of his blood and sweat, and that now only one final step was missing. Shortly after, he summons several flaming swords, forming an enormous tornado of fire, while announcing the beginning of the ceremony. Chu Ling's adopted father holds her by the arms, and says all those years of effort were worth it because of her sacrifice for the Chu family. Without hesitation, he hurls the girl directly into the fire, but suddenly, Chu Ling begins to laugh like a madwoman. Then quickly, she grabs one of the swords flying toward her. The moment she grips the enormous sword, the blade instantly changes color, leaving everyone in shock. Without wasting time, she advances toward the ancestor. The old man manages to block the strike, but his sword simply cannot withstand the girl's absurd pressure. Then, with a single swift cut, Chu Ling severs his head and declares that a demonic sword must be used to massacre demons. Her adopted father becomes completely desperate and asks whether she is still the same Chu Ling, but he quickly corrects himself and calls her Linger. The girl then asks why they did this to her, when she always treated all of them as family. Trying to survive, the man says there is no longer any need to sacrifice her, since she has become so powerful. He even says they should go home and forget all of it. But Chu Ling replies that he does not deserve to call her that. She then cuts his head off without any hesitation. The adoptive brother falls to his knees immediately, begging for his own life. He says he could even become her little dog if necessary, but the girl also cuts his head off, saying he was worse than a dog. Now the only person remaining was her adopted mother. When she sees only Chu Ling emerging from that place, she desperately asks what happened to the other two, but the girl, with a cold and empty gaze, replies that she no longer has any family at all. Shortly after, she launches a swift strike at the woman's chest, declaring that the entire Chu family deserved to die. After that, Chu Ling falls to her knees completely exhausted, leaning on the demonic sword. Lu Ye, seeing all of this, comments that she was not bad at all. After all, she left not a single soul alive in Chu Sword Mansion, and did not even spare the chickens of the place. Even so, he quickly says he no longer wants to watch. The system then warns that a cultivator from the nascent soul realm is about to arrive to kill her, but Lu Ye simply does not care. Meanwhile, Chu Ling wept alone, realizing she had been completely wrong all along. It is then that Master Li Jian appears, saying that the demonic sword has truly been successfully forged, and since that sword could only bring pain and suffering, he declares he will free her from it. But the instant he tries to attack, he realizes the girl is not even reacting. He then comments that she is just another foolish girl. He proceeds to declare that the demonic sword now belongs to him and that she will die right there. But to his surprise, the demonic sword moves on its own and protects Chu Ling, releasing such an absurd pressure that even the master's clothes begin to disintegrate. At that moment, he realizes that despite her being only at the core formation stage, her sword mastery was completely monstrous. He therefore concludes that the girl is hiding an enormous secret, and beyond finding the demonic sword, he had also gained unexpected fortune. But Chu Ling simply turns around and begins to flee. While chasing after her, the master keeps telling her not to run, claiming he is a kind uncle. But the only thing in Chu Ling's mind was that she had been wrong and needed to make amends as quickly as possible. At the same time, Yue Hongling was knocking on Lu Ye's door, demanding he come out. She even threatens to force her way in, but quickly remembers the absurd beating she received from him before. So, from a distance, she asks why she only managed to condense one celestial core, even using treasures and pills to help with cultivation. According to her, she should have been able to form a sacred core even without any help. She therefore asks whether Lu Ye sabotaged her cultivation on purpose. The system then comments that she is clearly insulting him, and asks whether Lu Ye will really let that slide. But Lu Ye simply replies that he sealed his own ears to focus on cultivation, and is completely ignoring the girl. And in this life, nothing will stop Lu Ye from proving his own Tao and becoming a saint. At that moment, Bai Qiulan appears calling out to Yuhe Hongling, telling her to stop yelling like that. She then asks what exactly her celestial core has to do with Lu Ye. Yuhe Hongling replies that in the past, every time she advanced in cultivation, Lu Ye would hand over mountains of treasures and pills to help her, saying it would make her advancement perfect. So this time, she decided to gather some resources on her own. But this ended up completely disrupting her true chi, and, in the end, she only managed to condense one celestial core. But Bai Qiulan says that is pure nonsense from her imagination. She explains that whenever Lu Ye helped Yue Hongling, he refined and adjusted those countless treasures and pills countless times before handing over anything. She then asks whether she has any idea of the absurd effort he put into all of that. She also questions how she expected to achieve the same result by mixing everything together on her own without any care. It is at this instant that Yue Hongling's realization finally begins to set in. Bai Qiulan then comments that the entire sect knows very well that Lu Ye always cared more about Yu Hongling than about anyone else, and apparently, the only one who never noticed that was herself. After that, Bai Qiulan says it would be better for her to apologize to Lu Ye, but Yuhe Hongling immediately replies that she will never do that. According to her, Lu Ye separated her from Feng Wuxi and also indirectly caused his death. For that reason, she will never be able to forgive him. Then Bai Qiulan loses her patience and sends her to reflect on her own actions in the mountains until she understands her own mistake. She also makes it clear that she will not be permitted to leave until she understands everything she has done. Even so, Yue Hongling, extremely proud, replies that she will accept that without any problem, saying she does not even care about that punishment. Meanwhile, our beloved Chu Ling, with her absurdly beautiful panels, slowly climbs an enormous staircase. Throughout the entire journey, her thoughts are only on the Great Tao sect. When she finally reaches the top, her body gives out and she ends up fainting. Before losing complete consciousness, the only words she manages to say are her own name and Lu Ye's. But at that moment, Master Li Jian appears, saying he chased that wretch all the way here. He then states he has no intention whatsoever of offending the Great Tao sect and asks them to take the girl away immediately. But a woman from the sect draws her sword at him and tells him not to be in such a hurry. After all, the girl had mentioned someone from their sect, so she needed to go back and verify the situation first. And if her master truly did not know the girl, then he could take her away. After that, she tells other disciples to keep an eye on Chu Ling while she climbs up to the White Orchid Peak. When she arrives, she informs Lu Ye that there is a woman named Chu Ling who fainted outside the mountain and asks whether he knows her. But Lu Ye coldly replies that he does not know that person. The woman then says that in that case, they will not save her. At that instant, the system appears asking whether he really intends to let the girl die like that. But Lu Ye replies by asking whether the system has already forgotten how she treated him in his past life. Besides, he was certain she would not die so easily. The woman then returns to Li Jian and says he may take her away because her master stated he did not know that girl. Li Jian then smiles and comments that he already knew the Great Tao sect was an extremely just faction. According to him, it made no sense for such an honorable sect to associate with a demoness like Chu Ling, and for that reason, he himself would take her away, so as not to taint the sect's name. But just as he was about to grab the girl, who appears but Bai Qiulan herself, immediately telling him to stop, Li Jian asks whether the magnificent Great Tao sect is going back on its own word. Then one of the sect's women responds, calling him insolent and asking whether he wants to test the edge of the Great Tao sect's swords. Even so, Li Jian does not back down and replies that his sword is not blind either. But before he can do anything, Bai Qiulan lands a direct blow on him and completely freezes the man. She then coldly states they will leave only Li Jian's corpse there because she herself will bring Chu Ling back to the sect. Shortly after, she hands the girl over to another woman to begin treatment. The disciple is shocked by Chu Ling's state and asks how she managed to get so injured. Bai Qiulan then comments that in truth, Chu Ling should have been dead long ago, but her will to stay alive was completely absurd. Even so, the woman replies there is no reason for concern because as long as the girl is still breathing, she can save her. Sometime later, Chu Ling finally awakens, and as soon as she opens her eyes, the first thing she asks is where Lu Ye is. Bai Qiulan explains that he is still in seclusion and that it is not yet the moment to come out. Chu Ling then asks whether the young master personally asked them to save her. She also says she needs to find Lu Ye as quickly as possible to speak with him. But Bai Qiulan asks her to calm down and tells her to focus first on healing her own wounds. According to her, when Chu Ling is fully recovered, perhaps Lu Ye will have already come out of seclusion. But Chu Ling replies that she needs to apologize immediately to the young master because she finally understands everything she had wrong this entire time. She admits that Lu Ye never tried to possess her and that he was in fact protecting her all along without her ever realizing it. Meanwhile, another woman who was listening to the conversation nearly dies of embarrassment upon hearing the word possess, and apparently Bai Qiulan immediately notices she was eavesdropping from behind the door. She then politely asks her to step away for a moment. The woman ends up leaving, but Bai Qiulan continues telling Chu Ling that from now on, she no longer needs to call her sister. She then explains confirms that, back then when her chaos poison erupted, Lu Ye only did that because it was the only way to save her. But Bai Qulun notices the woman is still trying to eavesdrop from outside, so she uses a technique to completely seal the environment, preventing any sound from escaping. This leaves the woman outraged, because she very much wanted to keep listening to that gossip. After that, the scene shifts once more, and Lu Ye finally awakens from seclusion. The system then informs him that Chu Ling has been kneeling outside for a long time, and asks whether he does not intend to have a look at her. But Lu Ye replies that obviously not. He declares he has not forgotten what she did in his past life, and states that women only serve to slow down his cultivation speed. In this life, nothing is more important than cultivation itself. Meanwhile, Chu Ling continued kneeling, believing that if she persevered there long enough, one day Lu Ye would end up forgiving her. The scene then shifts to Scarlet Glow Peak, and it is explained that the Great Tao Sect has 9 main peaks and 72 secondary peaks. Among them are the White Orchid Peak and Scarlet Glow Peak. It is precisely at this moment that a man ends up being attacked after spending time watching Yue Hongling. She then asks who he is. The man replies that his name is Linghu Wushuang, the new eldest disciple of Scarlet Glow Peak. Upon hearing that, Yue Hongling immediately remembers that in the future he would reach the 8th heaven before dying fighting at the Shadowed Tomb. She then realizes that man would end up becoming a true hero, and it seems that after Lu Ye refused the position of Holy Son, he ended up becoming the Holy Son of the Great Tao Sect anyway. Meanwhile, Wushuang appeared before Yue Hongling and commented that he had seen the technique she was practicing earlier. According to him, her movements were extremely refined and the energy flow was very stable. He therefore asked whether he could receive some guidance from her, but Yue Hongling immediately calls him a kid and says he has not the slightest chance of beating her. Even so, Wushuang replied that she is not that much older to be acting so arrogantly. He also says that only a fight could truly determine who is stronger. Then Yue Hongling decides to propose a different challenge. Instead of fighting her, she tells him to challenge Lu Ye first. She says that if he manages to beat that guy, then he can come back to face her. But Wushuang is confused because he does not even know who Lu Ye is. Since he has no rivalry with the guy, he asks why he should go after him. That is when Yue Hongling reveals that Lu Ye is precisely the reason she was punished by her own master. At once, Wushuang wants to know exactly what happened between them, so Yue Hongling sits down and begins to tell the whole story. Half an hour later, the boy is already completely outraged by everything he heard. He says it is revolting and that his blood is already boiling just thinking about it. Shortly after, he asks Yue Hongling to wait there, because he is going to vent all that anger immediately. He even says he will make Lu Ye kiss her beautiful little feet that very day. But Yue Hongling thinks he has lost his mind. She says he would not even manage to touch Lu Ye's cuticle. Even so, Wushuang replies that he has already made up his mind. According to him, if he does not teach that scoundrel Lu Ye a lesson, then he would not be worthy of calling himself a man. The scene then shifts and Wushuang already appears at Lu Ye's door. When the protagonist notices his presence, he asks who it is. The boy then introduces himself, while Lu Ye wonders why that kid showed up there. In his mind, the first encounter between the two should only happen at the entire sect disciple tournament. He even recalls that in that competition, he had finished in first place while Wushuang came in second. When he opens the door, Lu Ye sees the boy asking whether he is really the famous Lu Ye. The protagonist confirms and also asks what the senior of Scarlet Glow Peak is doing there. But Wushuang is completely surprised that Lu Ye already knows his story. Lu Ye then explains that is normal, since there are many stories about him in the sect. After all, condensing a celestial core in just 2 months and 12 days is truly something impressive. This immediately makes Wushuang swell with pride, causing him to start showing off. Then Lu Ye praises him further, saying he is a true example for the Great Tao Sect. But the boy quickly remembers why he came and declares he has come to challenge him. But Lu Ye replies that he was bored anyway, so he will accept the fight. Besides, he knows that boy has absurd potential and might provide valuable information in the future. The scene shifts again and the two are already shown in battle. Wushuang advances first, going straight at Lu Ye, but the protagonist dodges his sword using only his fingers. Shortly after, he lands a precise blow on the boy's weapon, causing him to lose his balance and end up being struck from behind. After that extremely quick humiliation, Lu Ye says that is enough, but Wushuang refuses to accept and asks for another try. At that moment, he activates the Scarlet Glow sword art and declares he doubts Lu Ye can escape that blow. But the protagonist dodges with extreme ease, grabs the boy and hurls him away. On top of that, he mocks him by asking if he wants to keep getting beaten. Even so, Wushuang insists. He admits his skills may be inferior to Lu Ye's, but declares his comprehension is far superior. He then reveals he has already grasped the second form of the Scarlet Glow sword art and launches an extremely powerful attack in the protagonist's direction. But Lu Ye simply splits the blow in two without any difficulty. After that, he even praises the boy's comprehension, saying it truly is very good. Upon seeing that, Wushuang is left completely speechless. With no other choice, he admits defeat and says the fight has gone far enough. Then Lu Ye tells him to relax, because if anyone anyone asks, he will say the battle lasted 10 rounds and that he barely won. This immediately makes Wu Shuang smile, realizing the guy is genuinely a great fellow. After that, he says his farewell. But at that very moment, Chu Ling appears saying that Lu Ye has finally come out of his room, and that is when Wu Shuang begins to wonder if there really are that many beautiful women on White Orchid Peak. The guy is already contemplating moving there. However, as soon as Chu Ling gets close, Lu Ye simply slams the door in her face. This leaves the girl completely frustrated. And honestly, every Chu Ling seems to be born with kilometer-long thighs, because something like that just cannot be possible. Meanwhile, Wu Shuang, who is no fool, comments that the sea is full of fish. According to him, if one guy does not want her, there will certainly be another interested. The problem is that Chu Ling simply ignores the man completely. After that, Wu Shuang decides to let it go. In his mind, the girl may be gorgeous, but she seems too blind to notice certain things. Shifting scenes, he returns to Yue Hongling and tells her he lost the battle, but she replies that she already knew he would not hold up against Lu Ye. Even so, Wu Shuang comments that from the little he saw, that guy seems pretty decent. In fact, very different from the image she had painted of him. Then Yu Hongling explains that he may be decent with men, but with women the story is completely different. But Wu Shuang does not believe that very much. After all, he had just seen a girl kneeling at the guy's door, begging for his attention. At that moment, Yue Hongling gets curious and asks who that girl is. Wu Shuang then replies that she is very beautiful and that he heard someone calling her Linger. When she hears that, Yue Hongling becomes completely indignant upon realizing that Chu Ling had truly returned. She begins to wonder what she should do now. Shortly after, the girl starts pacing in circles like a headless chicken, trying to understand why on earth she is feeling jealous. This ends up leaving Wu Shuang completely frustrated, because he begins to suspect she is just another one of Lu Ye's women. Without wasting time, he draws his sword. After all, he had fulfilled his promise to challenge Lu Ye, so now it was her turn to fight him. But Yue Hongling replies that he did not even manage to beat Lu Ye. Wu Shuang, however, says it does not matter, because he only went to challenge the protagonist because of her. Now she needs to face the consequences. Then Yu Hongling accepts the duel and says it is time to make that kid give up on this idea once and for all. She even warns that she will not go easy like Lu Ye did. But 1 hour after the fight, Wu Shuang is already completely destroyed. Meanwhile, Yu Hongling tells him to stop bothering her cultivation and go away from there. As for the boy, all he can think about is what on earth is wrong with the people from White Orchid Peak, because each one of them seems crueler than the last. Meanwhile, Yu Hongling can think of only one thing: why Chu Ling came back. So without thinking twice, Yue Hongling runs off toward Lu Ye's room, saying she needs to see it with her own eyes. Meanwhile, Chu Ling is still kneeling in front of the door, begging relentlessly and saying she made a terrible mistake. It is then that the door finally opens, causing her to fall forward onto the ground. But the instant she raises her head, she realizes that Lu Ye is simply not there anymore. The young man had vanished without a trace. At that moment, Yu Hongling arrives, asking why she is still kneeling, if Lu Ye is not even in the room. But Chu Ling, still crying, replies that it does not matter whether he is there or not. She will keep kneeling all the same. With no patience for that, Yue Hongling pulls her by the arm and tells the girl to have at least a little dignity. But Chu Ling continues crying and says she wronged the young master far too badly. According to her, this is the punishment she deserves, and she would do anything for Lu Ye. It is at that moment that Bai Qiulan also appears. She tells Chu Ling that it is all in the past and that it is time for her to try to move forward and start her life anew. But Chu Ling reveals a truth that no one expected. She explains that the celestial paralysis poison cannot be expelled. Once it enters someone's body, it remains there permanently, with no cure of any kind existing. She then tells them that Lu Ye did not take that pill out of selfishness, as everyone believed. In reality, the poison had attacked his body and drained half of his strength. Upon hearing that, Bai Qiulan becomes completely shaken. For the first time, she begins to think that perhaps all of them had misunderstood everything all along. The scene then shifts to Lu Ye, who is meditating peacefully in the back mountain of the Great Tao sect. While he cultivates, the system warns that all those girls are waiting for him to return. But Lu Ye is not the least bit interested in that. All he wants at that moment is to cultivate in peace, because he has come to the conclusion that women are merely obstacles on his Tao path. The system then asks how long he intends to stay isolated there, but Lu Ye simply deactivates the system and replies that he will only come out after reaching the 13th layer of core formation, and he will do so before the All-Sect Disciple Tournament, which will be held in September. Besides that, he also wants to earn the qualification to enter the Great Tao Treasury Pavilion. Thus, 3 months pass quickly. Shortly after, an announcement echoes throughout the entire sect, informing that all peak masters should lead the disciples of Generation 92 to the Great Tao Plateau for the Grand Tournament gathering. As Lu Ye makes his way to the location, he notices that Yu Hongling, Chu Ling, and Bai Qiulan are also heading there, and the instant the girls spot Lu Ye, they immediately run toward him to apologize. This makes the other disciples die of envy, because 3 absurdly beautiful women are begging forgiveness to the same guy at the same time. But Lu Ye remains completely cold, without even looking properly at them. He tells all three to shut up and get out of his way. The reaction leaves all the disciples around completely shocked. The scene shifts again, and several disciples appear kneeling, while shouting that a true hero sets an example for their entire generation. But in front of everyone, a man tells the crowd to fall silent. Shortly after, he announces the arrival of the sect vice master. The vice master then begins his speech saying that the great Tao is vast and imposing, while the Tao illuminates all things. According to him, the heavens follow the 4 seasons, and humans must uphold moral order. Ghosts confuse the hearts of men while demons run free through the world. While the old man gave that endless speech, Liu Ye can only feel bored. In his mind, it was all too bureaucratic, exactly like the past life he had. Shortly after, the vice master explains that the tournament will follow a single elimination format. Everyone must fight using everything they have, and any cowardice before battle will be strictly forbidden. He then officially declares the 90th All-Sect Disciple Tournament open. The first fight ends up being Yuhei Hongling's, and the moment she steps into the arena, she leaves practically all the men completely smitten. But the battle ends far too quickly. Without any difficulty, she defeats her opponent with a single attack. Shortly after, it is Chu Ling's turn to fight. Before the battle begins, she still tries to get Liu Ye's attention, but is completely ignored once more. This causes several people to comment that it is a waste for such a beautiful woman to keep chasing a guy like that. Even her opponent in the fight says that Liu Ye humiliates her in every way possible, and yet she keeps following him around like a desperate person. According to the girl, it makes all female cultivators look bad. But Chu Ling simply thanks her for the concern and replies that she does not care about that. For her, the young master is far more important than the sword Dao itself. Her opponent then says that is the biggest nonsense she has ever heard, and she promises to beat her up so badly it will knock some sense into her. And so the fight begins. Meanwhile, one of the women watching the tournament starts commenting about Liu Ye. She asks whether that is the famous handsome guy everyone talks about, but in her opinion, there are at least 10 men more handsome than him inside the Great Tao sect. Even so, she is curious to understand exactly what he did to make those girls so obsessed. While everyone is commenting, Chu Ling wins her battle without much difficulty. After that, she immediately looks at Liu Ye, hoping for some admiring reaction from him. But when everyone also looks at the young man, he simply ignores Chu Ling's existence completely. This causes many people to start calling Liu Ye a useless scoundrel. Shortly after, the next fight is announced. It will be Liu Ye of White Orchid Peak against Guking. At that moment, practically everyone begins rooting against Liu Ye. But the protagonist is puzzled by this, because he does not know that fellow from his past life. Even so, Guking already advances straight at him, saying he will teach Liu Ye a lesson in front of everyone. But with only a single red spiritual fist, Liu Ye destroys his opponent's sword and hits the man squarely. The fight ends instantly. With just one blow, Liu Ye wins the battle. This leaves one of the sect's elders quite impressed. According to him, that generation seems extremely promising. Then another elder comments that the disciples of White Orchid Peak are really too eye-catching. After all, they have Yu Hengling, Chu Ling, and also Liu Ye. He even admits he never imagined Bai Qiulan would be so talented at training disciples. But shortly after, he comments that the 3 of them are too intense in many senses, and should those 2 girls need to face Liu Ye, they might not even be able to fight properly. But when he looks to the side, he notices that even Bai Qiulan herself is watching everything in silence. The old man then lets slip that if things keep going like this, before long the Great Tao sect will end up turning into a pleasure union sect. Meanwhile, the rounds continue advancing quickly. In the second round, all 3 disciples of White Orchid Peak win once again. In the third round, exactly the same thing happens. Shortly after, another battle is announced. This time, it will be Liu Ye of White Orchid Peak against Li Jumin of the Seeking Dao Peak. But the fight barely begins. With just one punch, Liu Ye destroys his opponent's spiritual barrier without the slightest difficulty and wins yet again instantly. The next fight will be between Liu Ye himself and Yue Hongling. As soon as she steps into the arena, Yue Hongling admits she knows very well she cannot beat him. Even so, she wants to make a deal and asks him not to hit her face. But Liu Ye replies that it is a good thing she told him that beforehand, and promptly delivers a massive punch right to the center of her face. This leaves Yu Haimling completely furious. Without wasting time, she invokes the Fearless God Fist and charges at him, but Liu Ye has no difficulty dealing with the attack. He simply destroys her blow through sheer brute force and also hurls the girl far away. The scene is so absurd that everyone watching begins to wonder whether by any chance that guy hates women. Shortly after, the 5th round begins, and this time it is Liu Ye against Linghu Wushuang. As soon as he enters the arena, Wushuang comments that he has already corrected all his flaws. Even so, he has the feeling he still cannot withstand Liu Ye's power. The protagonist then replies that recognizing one's own shame and finding the courage to improve is precisely the true path of cultivation. Upon hearing that, Wushuang asks why someone so rational is being so merciless toward his own apprentices. But just smiling, Liu Ye says that is none of his business. The fight then begins, and at that very instant, Liu Ye releases his sword intent. The pressure of his aura is so monstrous dangerous that Wu Shuang becomes completely terrified, unable to understand what kind of power that is. Seeing his opponent's reaction, Liu Ye calmly asks whether he still wants to continue the battle. But at that moment, Wu Shuang practically wets himself from fear and immediately admits defeat. This leaves all the elders watching completely incredulous. One of the old men then comments that Liu Ye should certainly become his disciple, since Bai Qiulan does not even follow the sword Dao. But another elder immediately counters, saying that is absurd, since that old man cannot even defeat Liu Ye himself. Quickly, everyone starts arguing about who should become Liu Ye's master, but Bai Qiulan interrupts the discussion and reminds them that Liu Ye is a disciple of White Orchid Peak. She also says it is extremely rude to speak that way in her presence. Even so, the elders do not give up. They begin offering every kind of benefit to both her and Liu Ye, saying they are even willing to hand over all the essence accumulated over 20 years of cultivation. But Bai Qiulan refuses everything immediately, declaring she will not hand over her disciple to anyone. While observing all this, Liu Ye begins to find the whole situation strange. In his mind, Bai Qiulan should fear that he would betray the sect in the future and end up killing her afterward. So why was she protecting him like this instead of trying to eliminate him right away? It is at that moment that Bai Qiulan's uncle appears, and he is no ordinary person. He is none other than the Sword Venerable of War itself. As soon as he emerges, everyone present quickly salutes him as the War Sword Supreme. Even Liu Ye is surprised, since a Supreme Elder of the Dao Integration Realm had personally appeared to compete for him. But right after, another elder appears, saying he feels that Liu Ye is far more compatible with his own sword Dao. Then a third old man also emerges, declaring that both of them are wrong and that the boy is clearly more compatible with his own path. Seeing all this, Bai Qiulan realizes that 3 Supreme Elders are gathered right in front of her. She then reminds them that per sect rules, disciples can only be chosen when they first join. Now that they have realized Liu Ye is an absurd genius, everyone wants to steal him, and that is definitely not the behavior of respectable elders. But one of the old men replies that she is not even a sword cultivator, so how does she intend to teach a sword cultivator of such a high level? Even so, Bai Qiulan stands firm and says that still does not give them the right to steal her disciple. Then one of the elders decides to hear from Liu Ye himself. He asks directly whether the boy is willing to leave White Orchid Peak to train under a true sword master. The question leaves the girls of the peak completely frightened. After all, if Liu Ye left there, they would probably never have any connection again. But at that moment, Liu Ye begins to laugh and replies that of course he is willing. This makes the Warsword Venerable smile with satisfaction. He then declares he will report everything to the sect master and leave the final decision in his hands. After the Supremes leave, the other elders also rush after Liu Ye, trying to persuade him. Meanwhile, Yu Hongling desperately asks Bai Qiulan what she intends to do now. Bai Qiulan then replies that as long as Liu Ye is still there, no one will take him from her, and since everyone wants to see the sect master, she will also go to him. At that moment, it is announced that the tournament is not yet over. The fights will continue, and the next semi-final will be between Chuling and Xiao Huarong. As soon as she enters the arena, Chuling calmly tells the girl to make the first move. But before the fight truly begins, the scene shifts to the Great Dao Hall. Inside, one of the Supremes insists for the sect master to decide in his favor, saying that Solitary Sword Peak has been without successors for a long time. Another declares he cannot watch such a monstrous sword Dao talent be wasted in Bai Qiulan's hands. It is then that the master of the Great Dao sect finally appears, Liu Changfeng. With no patience whatsoever, he tells everyone to be quiet. Shortly after, he turns his attention to Bai Qiulan, but his expression changes completely. With a smile on his face, he comments that it has been a year since the last time he saw her, but even so she remains as beautiful as ever. This leaves the other Supremes completely indignant. But ignoring that, Bai Qiulan replies that sect rules exist for a reason, and that proper etiquette must be maintained regardless of the situation. The sect master then asks what she thinks about the entire dispute. Without hesitating, Bai Qiulan declares she will not allow Liu Ye to leave White Orchid Peak, since doing so would go against sect rules. But one of the old men counters, saying she is a spell cultivator and should not ruin a disciple's future out of mere stubbornness. Even so, Bai Qiulan replies that, although she specializes in spells, she is also extremely skilled with the sword, so if the 3 martial uncles truly do not trust her, she will ask the sect master for permission to face all 3 in a sword battle. And if she wins, Liu Ye stays on White Orchid Peak. One of the old men accepts immediately and says he will seal his own cultivation at the Void Refinement Realm, placing it at the same level as hers. That way, they will only compete in sword technique, and if he loses, he will leave Liu Ye with her. But Bai Qiulan simply invites him to fight in the skies, asserting with confidence that she will not lose. The sect leader then asks the Solitary Sword Elder to be careful and not hurt Bai Qiulan. Meanwhile, she is already beginning to prepare a gigantic strike. In just a few seconds, Bai Qiulan invokes a sword so colossal that even Chuling, who is still in the tournament, can see it from a distance. The Solitary Sword Elder is completely dumbfounded by that power, unable to believe what he is seeing, anything, but Bai Qiulan simply asks him to be careful. The next instant, the strikes of both clash, causing a gigantic explosion across the skies. But Bai Qiulan's sword is far more powerful and completely destroys the Elder's sword, shattering it into several pieces. As soon as she realizes she has already won, she immediately calls out the next martial master to fight. But the other supremes interrupt everything, saying that is already sufficient. The sword Dao displayed by Bai Qiulan makes it clear she truly has the capacity to teach Lu Ye. Therefore, they give up the dispute and declare they will not take her disciple. The other elder also agrees, and Bai Qiulan thanks the three of them. At that moment, the sect master asks whether the sword technique she used belongs to the great Dao sect. But being modest as always, Bai Qiulan replies she obtained that technique by chance and confirms it truly does not belong to the sect. Seizing the opportunity, Lu Changfeng comments that since she likes swords so much, he has several rare manuals stored away, and asks whether she would like to go to the library together with him. But Bai Qiulan politely declines, saying she does not like sword techniques that much and prefers other things. Meanwhile, the scene returns to the tournament, where the winner of the semi-final turns out to be Chu Ling. Thus, the final fight is decided. The battle will be between Chu Ling and Lu Ye. Shortly after, Lu Ye appears in the arena, but there is something strange about him. His killing intent is absurd, so heavy that even the atmosphere seems different. Sensing this, Chu Ling begins to wonder whether by any chance he really is trying to kill her. And when the two begin to face each other in the center of the arena, practically everyone in the audience starts rooting for Chu Ling to defeat that scoundrel. But to everyone's surprise, Chu Ling simply kneels before Lu Ye. The entire audience is outraged, unable to understand what is happening. Many begin to wonder whether that woman has gone completely mad. Then Lu Ye looks at her and says there is nothing left between them anymore. He then says he does not intend to kill her, but he simply wants her to stay away from him. But Chu Ling replies that he can kill her if he wants. Even so, she will never leave his side. It is at that moment that Lu Ye completely loses his patience and gives her an enormous slap across the face, calling her completely insane. And thus, with just that, the fight comes to an end. The winner of the tournament is officially Lu Ye. Shortly after, one of the officials hands him a token and tells him to go to the Great Dao Treasury Pavilion to claim his reward. But at the moment he takes the token, Lu Ye feels an extremely strange icy air. He then quickly realizes that energy is coming from Bai Qiulan herself, and this puzzles him because she seems to have become far stronger all of a sudden. The woman who was beside Bai Qiulan also notices this and asks whether she can already face someone from the Dao integration realm. She also comments she has the feeling that Bai Qiulan has been hiding many things from her lately. She also says Bai Qiulan seems far more alluring than before and asks what she has been doing secretly behind her back. But at that very instant, Bai Qiulan blushes with embarrassment and quickly covers the woman's mouth to stop her from continuing. Even so, inside, Bai Qiulan is extremely worried because it seems the Chaos Wind poison had manifested ahead of schedule. When the girl asks what is happening, Bai Qiulan simply vanishes from the spot, saying she needs to take care of something urgent. Meanwhile, Lu Ye immediately realizes that is indeed the Chaos Wind poison inside her, so he simply waits for her to manage to neutralize it using her own power. The scene then shifts to the Great Dao Treasury Pavilion, where Lu Ye goes to collect his reward. After handing over the token, an elder explains that the higher he goes in the pavilion, the greater the level of the available treasures. He may therefore choose 3 treasures below the 7th floor. After thinking for a moment, Lu Ye chooses the Wood Spirit Pearl, the key to the Divine Burial Mountain, and the 9 Dragon Treasure Furnace. The elder then comments that the Wood Spirit Pearl and the key to the Divine Burial Mountain are excellent items. However, the 9 Dragon Furnace is not that impressive, but Lu Ye calmly replies he has wonderful uses for it. Shortly after, the scene shifts again, and Lu Ye appears trying to sell precisely the furnace he just picked up. In truth, he wants to trade it for a profound soul fruit, so he begins walking from person to person offering the furnace, but no one accepts the trade. This ends up leaving him extremely frustrated, to the point where he starts wondering whether he will really be able to sell that thing. It is then that he has a brilliant idea. Lu Ye begins to say the furnace can refine all kinds of pills, as well as strengthen the body and immediately improve one's health. But the true finishing blow came after, when he declares the furnace also increases male virility. At that instant, several men become interested in the item and start asking what he wants in exchange. Lu Ye then replies he only wants a profound soul fruit, and just like that, he quickly finds a buyer. The scene shifts once more to the main gate of the Great Dao sect. There, Chu Ling is holding a small gift box. At that moment, Lu Ye appears in front of her, and the girl immediately says she prepared his favorite red bean dumplings. But as always, Lu Ye simply ignores her and keeps walking, thinking that now, with 3 treasures in hand, he can finally descend the mountain and settle some pending scores. Even so, Chu Ling keeps calling out to him without stopping. This irritates Lu Ye so much that he calls her a psychopath before disappearing from her sight. The scene then shifts to Bai Qiulan's courtyard, where she is simply sitting and meditating calmly. Meanwhile, her friend keeps thinking about how many things Bai Qiulan still still hides from her. She also does not understand why that icy air suddenly started coming out of her body. It is then that Yue Hongling appears, saying that the master's lunar poison is attacking too early. Upon hearing that, the other woman asks what on earth that lunar poison is, and why no one ever told her about it. Then Yue Hongling explains that the lunar poison is caused by the master's special constitution. This lunar power continuously accumulates inside her body until it condenses into liquid form, producing extreme cold and agonizing pain. But the strange thing is that the lunar poison normally should not manifest before the Dao integration realm, and Bai Qiulan has not yet reached that realm. Meanwhile, inside the room, Bai Qiulan suffers intensely from the poison. She cannot understand why, even using the sacred lunar transformation sutra, she has still not managed to fully dispel the poison and chaos as happened in her past life. Besides that, she also begins to wonder whether she still depends on Lu Ye as much as she once did. A short time later, the girls outside hear an extremely loud cry coming from the room. Then Bai Qiulan's voice finally emerges, saying the poison has completely disappeared. Quickly, one of the girls enters the room, congratulating her for finally reaching the Dao integration realm. She then asks how she is feeling. Bai Qiulan then tells her to relax, saying everything is fine. But the woman notices that an icy energy still invades her body and that her qi and blood are extremely weak. She also comments that, even having just reached the Dao integration realm, the state of her pulse still seems strange. At that moment, Bai Qiulan immediately asks Yu Hongling where Lu Ye is. Yu Hongling then replies he disappeared right after placing first in the tournament, and that he has probably left the sect to gain experience. Upon hearing that, Bai Qiulan asks whether he went to the Divine Burial Mountain, and Yu Hongling replies that he probably did. Then Bai Qiulan calls the two of them to go there immediately. Meanwhile, the other girl is completely confused, trying to understand what place that Divine Burial Mountain is. But Bai Qiulan simply takes Yu Hongling's hand and says the two of them need to go there together. The other girl complains, saying she considers Bai Qiulan her best friend, but is still being treated like garbage. She then asks what exactly those two are hiding from her. Then Bai Qiulan calmly replies, they were just discussing whether to bring her along or not. The girl replies immediately that of course she will come along regardless. After that, she asks Yue Hongling why she seems so distracted lately. Then Yue Hongling, completely awkward, replies it is nothing much, but deep down she knows very well she has wronged Lu Ye badly and desperately wants him to be alright. Shifting scenes once more, the three girls finally arrive at the location and find Chu Ling. Meanwhile, the woman accompanying Bai Qiulan and Yu Hongling is extremely curious to discover all the gossip happening there. Then Chu Ling explains that the young master has already entered the Divine Burial Mountain and that she is currently guarding the entrance for him. Upon hearing that, Yu Hongling says she has a terrible feeling about the situation and asks whether she should go in to check. But Chu Ling immediately asks what she is so worried about. Then Yu Hongling lowers her head and replies that what Chu Ling did, she did too. Chu Ling ends up becoming very frightened and asks whether she also poisoned him. Yu Hongling then mentions the primordial morning mist, and at that moment Chu Ling starts running alongside her, saying they need to find the young master immediately. Meanwhile, the other woman is confused, saying she has never heard of a poison called celestial paralysis or primordial morning mist. But partway along, she ends up tripping over a strange creature and wonders what on earth that thing is. But Chu Ling tells her not to worry, explaining those are just beetles killed by their young master. Even so, the woman is shocked to realize those beetles were at the nascent soul realm. The most absurd thing to her is the fact that Lu Ye is still only at the core formation stage, so she cannot understand how he managed to kill creatures of that level. Chu Ling then explains that the formations inside the location have already been destroyed by the young master, so they can enter without any problem. After that, the three finally manage to reach him and find Lu Ye sitting in meditation. Yu Hongling sighs in relief upon realizing the primordial morning mist has not yet fully erupted, but when she looks at him more carefully, she sees the situation is far from good. Lu Ye's body is freezing cold, while his face shows great pain. At that moment, Yue Hongling becomes desperate upon realizing the primordial morning mist has begun to spread through his body again. Chu Ling immediately advances to help him, but Lu Ye tells her to get out of his way at once. Yue Hongling, completely desperate, says he will not be able to resist that mist on his own, and begs to help him, saying she can use her moonlight power to temporarily freeze the poison. But even while coughing up blood, Lu Ye continues telling all of them to step back. Chu Ling then says that if the young master has told everyone to leave, she will obey. Crying, she asks the other girls to leave the place. The two end up going out, and Yu Hongling tries to act as though she does not care about him. But Bai Qiulan says they need to leave, since he clearly does not want help. But at that exact moment, a massive explosion occurs, completely destroying the tunnel of the underground palace. Yu Hongling falls into despair at that moment, starts crying, and says she has killed Lu Ye once again. Seeing her mental state, Bai Qiulan uses a spell to put her to sleep and get some rest, realizing the girl is already completely emotionally overwhelmed. While looking at her unconscious, Bai Qiulan Qiulen wonders how much more pain Yu Hongling can endure. The other woman, who until now had no name in that story, asks whether they should not go check what happened, but Bai Chulan says it is better to wait a little, so 2 hours pass. After that time, she notices that Lu Ye's nascent soul aura had advanced, so she decides to go check the situation. When she arrives, she finds Lu Ye nearly collapsed on the ground, almost fainting, while an intense purple aura surrounds his body. Bai Qiulan asks how he is, and even sweating heavily and clearly suffering, he replies everything is fine. Shortly after, he asks what kind of poison she put inside his body. Then Bai Qiulan reveals that the poison is called lunar marrow worm. Lu Ye begins to smile and comments that every time he advances to a new realm, a new poison appears in his life. After that, he asks what her position is in the queue of people who have tried to poison him. Bai Qiulan replies she does not even remember clearly anymore. Even in that horrible state, Lu Ye manages to get up and says she does not need to keep doing that because he is already leaving. But upon looking more carefully, he notices that Bai Qiulan has already advanced to the Dao integration realm. He then concludes that the poison inside her body has probably already begun to condense. Smiling slightly, he comments that that kind of pain is something she knows very well. The scene then shifts to Yue Hongling waking up startled and immediately asking how the young master is. Bai Qiulen replies for her not to worry because Lu Ye is fine. Yue Hongling then asks whether 7 days have already passed, since that poison normally takes that long to disappear. But Bai Qiulen replies that only 1 day has passed. Yet judging by Lu Ye's state, it seems everything is completely under control. After that, Bai Qiulen mentions that in 6 months, the ancient Celestial Pride battlefield will finally open again, and she will finally be able to see Feng Wuxi once more. But the very next instant, she realizes she had even forgotten about him for a moment. Yu Hongling then gets up and says she will stay there looking after Lu Ye. Seeing that, Bai Qiulen realizes that this time she has truly and completely fallen for him. After that, Yu Hongling goes to talk to Chuling and says she will stay beside her looking after Lu Ye. But after standing guard for so long, both end up falling asleep sitting right there. Meanwhile, Lu Ye continues meditating and thinks he finally managed it. He then summons a tiny miniature of himself in the palm of his hand. Observing it, he comments he did not expect the primordial morning mist to be so effective, but he managed to refine it within his own nascent soul. But suddenly, the miniature of him shows him the middle finger. Lu Ye then realizes that is not merely a sacred infant soul. In truth, it is a holy infant soul. Even so, he simply smiles and thinks that in this life he will leave everyone behind. And more than that, he wants to see the despair on everyone's faces when that moment comes. Shortly after, the scene shifts once more, and a voice echoes out warning that all disciples of Generation 92 should pay attention and immediately gather at the Great Dao Pavilion. Lu Ye, upon hearing this, starts wondering what is happening. The system then replies that the ancient Celestial Pride battlefield has finally been opened. Lu Ye thinks that in his past life, he entered that place while only at the 6th layer of core formation, but in this new life, he has already reached the 5th layer of the nascent soul. Because of this, he is absolutely certain he will achieve far greater feats this time. Without wasting time, he runs toward the Great Dao Pavilion. When he arrives, the elder in charge explains that the ancient Celestial Pride battlefield is growing unstable and will open soon at 9 Dragon Valley. He also explains that place only appears once every 1,000 years, and the resources hidden inside are simply absurd. Besides that, any cultivator under 100 years of age can freely enter that battlefield. Chu Ling then asks Lu Ye whether he is really going to enter that place, but it is quickly explained that the interior of the battlefield is extremely dangerous and full of slaughter, since the spirits of ancient Celestial Pride specialists still wander there. In addition, the geniuses of the demonic race, evil spirits and ghosts are also gathered there. The sects are constantly fighting each other, stealing treasures and killing without mercy, so everyone is warned to be extremely careful. Meanwhile, Yue Hongling thinks that finally she will fight alongside Feng Wuxi once again. At that moment, an enormous floating ship appears out of nowhere in the skies, and Lu Ye quickly follows it toward the destination. It is then said that the ancient Celestial Pride battlefield has finally opened, something everyone had been waiting for far too long. The scene then shifts to a completely dark and frightening setting. A mysterious figure is sitting on a throne, announcing that it has a mission for everyone there: kill the geniuses of the righteous path. Shortly after, a bizarre and monstrous creature declares that it needs the life essence of the greatest human race geniuses. Whoever delivers this will be promoted to Demon King and personally receive the supreme demonic arts. Thus, all those creatures begin to salute the great demon emperor. Meanwhile, a bird flies through the skies, and it is said that in this life, it will kill the demon emperor of all spirits, the famous demon emperor Wan Ling. Returning to Lu Ye, Wu Shuang asks whether he knows the factions called the 9 Great Powers of the Great Wilderness. He then begins to explain that there is the eternal cult of the Wangu cult, as well as the three great dynasties, the Central Province Dynasty, the Nine Li Celestial Dynasty, and the Supreme Imperial Dynasty. There are also the five great sects, the Yin-Yang Dharma sect, the Supreme Sword sect, the Mountain and River Pagoda sect, the Tribulation sect, and of course the Great Tao sect. But Liu Ye is already completely out of patience and tells him to stop talking. Even so, Wu Shuang continues, saying that there are still heaven and earth to mention, representing the celestial pavilion and the lower world, completing the 9 great powers of the great wilderness. Shortly after, Chu Ling announces they are almost arriving at the destination. As soon as they arrive, several men are already waiting for them and start commenting that the group looks impressive, along with having several beauties accompanying them. One of them mentions there are 1,723 branches scattered across the cities, all packed daily, with business going very well. Right after, they notice the robes of 2 cultivators and start wondering whether the Yin-Yang Dharma sect has already chosen its holy son and holy maiden so quickly. Some even speculate whether those 2 are becoming Dao companions. The 2 are called Luo Yuan and Yang Wufa. At that moment, the Supreme Sword sect finally arrives. Many candidates are shocked by the intensity of their sword intent, while their own swords can barely remain steady. But shortly after, everyone realizes the Great Dao sect has also arrived, leaving everyone impressed as an elegant flying ship appears before them. Then Liu Ye descends from the vessel accompanied by his 3 wives. Quickly, Yang Wufa goes up to Xiao Harong and politely introduces himself, asking the name of that beauty. The girl responds normally, but since he is not satisfied with just one, he also tries to ask the names of the other 2. But Yue Hongling immediately tells him to get out of her way, leaving him completely frustrated. Seeing that, Liu Ye recalls that in his past life, he crushed the man's head without mercy, and thinks that perhaps that was not actually an injustice. Shortly after, Liu Ye steps away from the group, and Yue Hongling asks where the young master is going. When they follow him, they realize he simply sat down to meditate. The other people are incredulous, commenting that the ancient battlefield is about to open, but that guy decided to cultivate right at that moment. But just then, 2 people end up drawing everyone's attention. It is the 3rd prince of the Supreme Imperial Dynasty, Shangguan Wu Chang, accompanied by a girl named Shangguan Huanling. Noticing this, Liu Ye sees that Huanling has also arrived. Even so, he thinks that no longer matters, because in this life he has no relationship with her anymore. On the other hand, Huanling notices Liu Ye is right in front of her, accompanied by the very 2 girls who should hate him to death. She begins to wonder what on earth is happening. Meanwhile, Shangguan Wuchang comments that the women by that guy's side are truly gorgeous, but Huanling replies saying Liu Ye is no match for him. Wuchang then asks whether she is trying to provoke him, declaring that once they enter the ancient celestial pride battlefield, Liu Ye will be the first target used to sharpen his dominion. But Huanling coldly replies that if he truly tries that, he will die. Even so, Wuchang keeps mocking and says he will just die then. At that instant, Huanling reveals a completely disturbing smile, thinking that using Liu Ye's hands to eliminate Wu Chang would be simply perfect. The scene then advances to the following day, when everyone realizes they can finally enter the ancient celestial pride battlefield. Without wasting time, Liu Ye already rushes ahead of everyone, causing the other participants to run after him, since no one wants to let the Great Dao sect disciple stand out alone. But Yang Wufa declares that he will be the one entering first. As soon as he gets close, Liu Ye asks whether his schizophrenia has acted up again, leaving Wufa shocked and asking how he knows about that. Then Liu Ye simply tells him to relax, saying that will not happen anymore, because as soon as he dies, everything will return to normal. The 2 immediately enter into combat, and Wufa admits that Liu Ye is truly skilled, but Liu Ye asks whether that is all he can do. Shortly after, he activates his celestial venerable fist, and fires an enormous fist of flames toward the enemy. The attack leaves Wufa completely terrified, unable to understand how that is possible. After the devastating blow, he is already totally defeated. Then Liu Ye coldly comments that in this life he is even more pathetic than in the previous one. After that, he decides to take his opponent's storage ring, declaring that the time has finally come to recover his sword. A short time later, some people appear and are shocked to see the state of Yang Wufa, unable to understand how the holy son of the Yin-Yang Dharma sect ended up like that. It is then shown that his soul bloodstone is completely destroyed, causing several elders to be stunned upon realizing someone died so quickly. One of them, completely frightened, reveals that the one who died was none other than the holy son himself. At that moment, Luo Yuan simply comments coldly that he was trash and decides to investigate personally, since it makes no sense for someone to have eliminated Wufa so quickly. Meanwhile, many participants start mocking the situation, saying the holy son did not even have time to properly enter the battlefield before dying. Another comments that the Yin-Yang Dharma sect has completely lost its dignity. As for Shangguan Wuchang, he simply smiles and says this seems like it will be very entertaining, before finally heading toward the portal. But Huanling says that is not all, because a jaw-dropping surprise is waiting for him inside. The scene then returns to Liu Ye, who is thinking about his stone sword sword. Since the day it disappeared, he has never been able to use another real sword. At that moment, several swords begin to attack him at the same time, but Liu Ye destroys them all with just one move. Even surrounded, he continues advancing calmly and says they can all come at once because he is not afraid. After breaking yet another sequence of swords, he finally faces the sword trapped before him and says he has finally returned. When he gets close, Liu Ye holds the sword carefully and says it has no idea how much he missed it all those years. When he touches it, he also asks the sword not to be afraid of him, but the sword immediately responds irritably, asking what kind of nonsense that is, since it is not afraid of anyone. At that moment, Liu Ye thinks he had forgotten that at this point, the stone sword has not yet shown its cowardly side from his past life. He then extends his hand and asks it to follow him from now on, saying that together they will become the strongest sword in the heavens and the earth. He declares it will surpass the Three Lives sword, be stronger than the ancestral sword, more powerful than the supreme sword, and even greater than the famous invincible sword. After that, he asks whether it wants to surpass all of them. The sword spirit immediately replies that of course it does. Then Liu Ye smiles and says that from now on its name will be Stone Sword, but its nickname will simply be Little Pebble. At that moment, the sword explodes with rage, saying that name is awful and demanding a decent name, but Liu Ye starts mocking it, saying it seems like it really liked the nickname, and that will be its name. The sword becomes even more furious after that. At that moment, Chu Ling appears and congratulates the young master for finally recovering the stone sword, but the sword itself complains once again, telling everyone to stop calling it that. But it quickly completely changes its attitude and says to forget it, because it is very afraid of the dark, so it immediately asks Liu Ye to let it enter the storage space. Then Chu Ling asks where the young master is going now. In response, Liu Ye climbs onto a large rock and thinks it is already time to return to the first layer of the battlefield and recover the other treasures. It is then explained that the first layer of the battlefield is known as Supreme Clear Water. They say that bathing in that lake can drastically improve any cultivator's aptitude. Moreover, there is a legendary Supreme Clear Water pearl hidden at the bottom of the lake, and it is precisely this pearl that keeps those waters so crystal clear. Meanwhile, Yue Hongling thinks that in her past life, the one who found that pearl was Liu Ye himself. But this time it will be different, because she will get it herself. But many other people are also searching for the pearl. Some cannot withstand the water pressure, while others end up dying or fleeing in terror. At that moment, Shangguan Wushang appears following Yue Hongling, saying that path is extremely dangerous. But Yue Hongling coldly replies, she knows very well who he is. After all, he is Huanling's brother. This ends up surprising Wu Cheng, who asks whether she is also part of the Supreme Imperial Dynasty. He then suggests the two of them have a private conversation after they get out of there. But Yue Hongling replies that it all depends on one single thing, how deep he can dive. Full of confidence, Wu Cheng declares he can dive more than 1,000 meters without any trouble. Excited, he quickly dives ahead of her toward the bottom of the lake. But the very next instant, Yue Hongling launches a sudden attack against him, almost cutting the young man in two. Shortly after, she activates the Fearless Seal and summons an enormous water dragon before him. This leaves Shangguan Wuchang completely terrified, unable to understand how that girl can possess such absurd power. The water dragon begins to drag him violently back toward the surface, while Yue Hongling continues diving deeper and deeper. She then thinks she will not let anyone stand in her way. Sometime later, she has already reached 2,500 meters deep. She then begins to think she is almost there, since the lake should be only 3,000 meters deep. But when she finally reaches 3,000 meters, she realizes the bottom is still much farther down. When she reaches 4,000 meters, Yue Hongling is completely shocked and starts wondering why Liu Ye lied to her. She then realizes that perhaps he hid the truth precisely so no one would know how much he suffered to get there in his past life. Even so, she keeps descending until she finally finds the legendary pearl. When she looks at it, Yue Hongling thinks she only needs to fuse with that energy to fully restore her body. Besides that, her aptitude would also increase dramatically. But at that moment, she starts wondering why, in his past life, Liu Ye never used that pearl on himself. Even almost dying, he completely ignored his survival instinct and handed the treasure over to her. This makes Yue Hongling feel moved while underwater. She then realizes that no one ever treated her as well as Liu Ye, not even Feng Wuxi, the man she believed she loved. Even so, she tries to convince herself that this is not love, because the only person capable of making her heart race is Feng Wuxi. Even so, she decides that in this life, as long as Liu Ye allows her to remain by his side, she will accept any request from him, even if she needs to die for it. Shortly after, Yue Hongling consumes the pearl and immediately feels her strength explode. She then exits the water and realizes she has finally reached the nascent soul realm, but waiting for her is none other than Shangguan Wuchang. Even so, Yue Hongling says he already went through enough embarrassment in the water and that this time will be no different. Then Wuchang immediately charges at her, launching a brutal attack, but Yue Hongling blocks everything, using the Fearless God Fist. After being completely crushed once again, Wuchang is shocked, unable to understand how this is possible. powerful. After all, her strike power had multiplied several times since coming out of the water. The scene then shifts to the first layer of the battlefield, the famous Valley of 100 Herbs. They say that place was once the garden of an extremely powerful ancient sect, but that is not the most important thing about it. The true value of the valley lies in the countless unique formation arrays hidden throughout the region. While walking through the area, Liu Ye thinks that in order to fully consolidate his second life, he needs to obtain the Golden Sun Sunflower. He then leaps from the mountain toward the treasure, thinking he did exactly the same thing in his past life. But midway, he notices someone is breaking a formation array at an absurd speed. When he looks more carefully, he sees a man fighting alone against the formations and is immediately surprised. Liu Ye begins to wonder how he never encountered such a talented formation master before. People like that would normally never slip past his notice. He then reaches one single conclusion: that man probably died before reaching all the potential he possessed. Without wasting time, Liu Ye runs to help the young man, determined to prevent him from dying this time. Upon seeing Liu Ye suddenly appear, the man is completely startled and asks whether he is human or a ghost. But Liu Ye simply asks whether he looks that ugly, to the point of not seeming human. The young man then quickly apologizes and comments that Liu Ye simply draws more attention than anyone else there. At that moment, Liu Ye finds the boy unexpectedly outgoing and then asks for his name. The young man then introduces himself as Li Huayu. Upon hearing this, Liu Ye says he will remember that name, but for now, he should continue breaking the formation arrays. Shortly after, Liu Ye completely alters the structure of the formation before them. This leaves Huayu totally astonished. At that instant, he finally understands the difference between the weak and the strong. The weak only think about destroying formations, while true experts can alter their structure and use them to their own advantage. After that, Liu Ye picks up the Golden Sun Sunflower and prepares to leave, saying he has already gotten what he wanted. He also tells Huayu to enjoy the place as much as he wants, because he is already heading out. But Huayu still wants to know the name of that absurd man who appeared out of nowhere. But before he can even ask properly, he realizes that Liu Ye has truly and completely transformed the formation array around them. And it is precisely at that moment that several muscular and extremely suspicious-looking men start appearing behind him. This leaves Huayu completely shocked, unable to understand what on earth is happening. In his mind, this can only be some kind of illusion. After that, the scene shifts to the Celestial Spirit Pool, a place extremely rich in spiritual energy and perfect for cultivation. When Liu Ye arrives, he sees a man lying on the ground, completely injured and begging for help. At the same time, a monstrous creature appears above them and warns that Liu Ye will also die if he tries to interfere. But Liu Ye quickly realizes there is not just one creature there. Several are hidden all around. Even so, with just a single blow, he cuts through several of them at the same time. The man who was saved is completely impressed and asks for the name of his savior. He then introduces himself as Ji Liang of the Qiankun sect, saying he will repay that debt in the future. But Liu Ye coldly replies he does not need any of that. After the fight, Liu Ye notices the enormous number of bodies scattered throughout the area and understands that the Great War has finally begun. At that moment, other cultivators appear running in desperation, saying that the demonic race has taken over the Celestial Spirit Pool. To resist against the demons, monsters, and ghosts, the humans decide to form a great alliance, but Liu Ye immediately asks who authorized that alliance. Then one of the men replies it was Yu Hangling. This immediately sparks Liu Ye's curiosity, and he decides to go to the Celestial Spirit Pool to personally see the situation. While walking, he thinks that since it was Yue Hongling who led this, it makes sense that the course of events has changed so much compared to his past life. The scene then shifts once again to the Celestial Spirit Pool. When Liu Ye arrives at the location, one of the creatures comments that this is interesting, because apparently there is still a human bold enough to appear there alone. The monsters immediately get excited and prepare to attack him. But in a matter of seconds, several of them are cut in two without even understanding what happened. Meanwhile, Liu Ye even mocks them, saying that villains who talk too much normally die too soon as well. After that, all the creatures charge at the same time, but end up being defeated almost instantly. Some try to attack from the skies, but Liu Ye coldly comments that those creatures are polluting the environment before eliminating them as well. The few remaining survivors end up kneeling before him, begging for mercy. Then Liu Ye says he will deliver only one final blow. Whether they live or die after that depends solely on their own fate. A short time later, the scene shifts once again, showing Liu Ye completely calm inside the pool, surrounded by absolute silence. Meanwhile, one of the surviving creatures runs to the Celestial Centipede King to report that the situation is terrible. It explains that an extremely powerful human appears appeared out of nowhere and practically single-handedly annihilated almost all the demons at the celestial spirit pool. Desperate, the creature begs the celestial centipede king to take action and avenge all their fallen brothers. The king then asks whether that human is truly that frightening. The creature immediately replies yes, declaring he is far too strong, since he managed to kill several demons with just a single sword strike. But the very next instant, the celestial centipede king himself kills that creature without hesitation. After that, he coldly comments that this indeed sounds frightening, but reminds them they cannot forget the true objective of the mission. According to him, the absolute priority is to hunt Feng Wuxi, and nothing is more important than that. At that moment, another demon appears, saying it has finally located Feng Wuxi. Upon hearing that, the king smiles with satisfaction and orders everyone to depart immediately to execute him. He also declares he will make the Phoenix clan completely disappear from that world. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Yuhe Hongling. She comments that the number of people gathered is already sufficient, and thinks that what Lu Ye did in her past life, she managed to do before him in this life. Shortly after, she announces to everyone that the fortress has been successfully established, and that she is now leaving. One of the people then asks where she intends to go. Then Yuhe Hongling calmly replies, she is going after her true love. Meanwhile, a man appears kneeling on the ground, completely injured and surrounded by enemies. He asks the celestial centipede king why he wants to kill someone who has never had any issues with him, but the king coldly replies that it is simply the survival of the fittest, true natural selection. According to him, if he had to explain his reasons every time he killed some trash, he would spend his entire life doing nothing but giving explanations. Even though injured, the man still strikes back, asking what kind of ability it is to intimidate using numerical advantage. He then challenges the king to a one-on-one fight, but the celestial centipede king immediately bursts out laughing in his face, asking whether he also wants him to fold all his legs to make the battle fair, and he says that as soon as he became stronger, he would definitely exterminate his entire race. But then he hears the girl calling for help, and he even feels embarrassed, since he had thought she was beautiful. As soon as she passed by him, she felt relieved to have finally found Feng Wuxi, and that he had been in her heart all this time, but he tells her that he could not save her because he was running for his own life. The centipede says that it had no intention of making them its enemies, and asks why they do not kill those two thieves together. Feng Wuxi asks why so many demons were after her and what she had done, and she thought that if she had not tried to recreate the events of her past life, those demons would be nothing to her. But Feng Wuxi suspects that those monsters were jealous of his handsome face, and that was why they were chasing him. She thought that his narcissistic side was similar to Lu Ye's, but quickly stopped herself from thinking about him. Meanwhile, Lu Ye was relaxing in the waters, thinking that the cultivation effects of the heavenly spirit pool were even better than he had imagined. In just 3 days, he had already reached the 6th level of the nascent soul realm. Then someone arrives and says that this place shared a destiny with their sect, and asks whether he could find another place to cultivate. But Lu Ye says that he was cultivating there, and had not provoked their sect, and since they were no match for him, he advised them not to provoke him either. One of the bald monks says that this spirit pool radiated Buddha's light and had been formed from a sarira, asking him to go somewhere else. Lu Ye asks if they were really determined to drive him away. Then several other bald monks appeared, saying that if he refused to listen to reason, then they and the other monks would teach him a lesson. Lu Ye became furious, wondering how they dared to even steal his lines, and attacked all of them with his power, defeating them easily. Back with Feng Wuxi, he asks whether she knew any safe place, and she tells him to go find her senior brother. In front of him, that crowd would be nothing but a bunch of losers. He asks whether her brother was really that strong, but she quickly turns around and says yes, her brother was very strong, asking him to follow her. He suggests that she tell her senior brother that he was a good demon, adding that he had never devoured a human and could be friendly. She says that her brother did not kill innocents, but asks whether he had any way to get rid of them. He says that he does, but asks her to promise to take him along afterward, and she agrees. Then, powerful flames rise around him along with his power. All the demons are shocked, wondering why no one had mentioned that the boy was a phoenix, and they tell everyone to run. Shortly after splitting the battlefield apart, he collapses from exhaustion into her arms. He asks how she knew his name, and she says that she had heard about him before, but he asks who had told her about him, since he had never heard of her either. She says that now was not the time for that, and that they should find her brother first. A little later, Feng Wuxi asks where he was and why he still had not appeared, and she says that maybe he was lost. But Feng Wuxi does not get angry, saying that she was so beautiful. She says that there was a huge canyon ahead, and that it was the perfect spot where they could take shelter. She says that she would guard the entrance, and once he recovered, he could take her place. Then the centipede appears, saying that they could not escape now, but suddenly, a fire attack rushes toward it, and she attacks the creature, telling him to leave quickly. This leaves Feng Wuxi confused. Since she was so strong, why had she run away before? All the monsters then charged toward the girl, and the centipede ordered them to kill them all in order to wear her down, since they greatly outnumbered her. Feng Wuxi thought she was incredibly strong, and wondered why she did not simply wipe out all the demons and monsters at once. Meanwhile, the girl girl remembered the Wuxi from her past life. When her physical strength could no longer endure, he had been the one who intervened and saved her. She wondered if the same thing would happen again in this life as well. She was on the verge of being captured, but he saved her at the last moment and said that now it was his turn, telling her to recover her strength. However, she found it strange because it was nothing like what had happened before. Everyone then rushed toward Fang Wuxi, and he defended himself against all the attacks, though with difficulty. She asked how Fang Wuxi was doing, and he replied that he could hold on a little longer. But she quickly knocked him unconscious by striking the back of his neck. She wondered if things could no longer return to how they once were and no longer saw any reason to stay there. The centipede then demanded that she hand over Wuxi, saying that his monster race would not take part in her revenge. But she ignored him and ended up blowing everything around them apart. A gigantic handprint appeared on the ground, yet the centipede refused to give up, declaring that he would fight her until the very end. In response, she landed a direct punch on him, saying that blow was for Feng Wuxi. The centipede wondered why she had been running away from them if she was actually that strong, because it made no sense. The scene then shifted to the monks, with almost all of them lying defeated. One of them asked if he had killed them, but he answered that interrupting his cultivation was a crime punishable by death and undeserving of mercy. The monk then asked whether killing people just because they interrupted him did not make him no different from a demon, declaring that today he would subdue him. He then used a formation technique known as the 18 Arhats demon subduing formation, but Liu Ye simply destroyed everything with a single wave of his hand. Unable to believe what he had witnessed, the monk fled from him as fast as he could, but Liu Ye paid him no attention and returned to cultivating. He remarked that, without even realizing it, he had reached the 7th layer of the fragmented infant realm. Changing scenes again, during the night, the girl thought that she had finally managed to be alone with him, though she wondered why it felt so strange. As soon as Liu Ye woke up, he wondered if he had died, but she told him that he was still alive. Wuxi then asked how they had escaped and where the monsters were, and she explained that her senior brother had appeared and killed them, allowing them to escape afterward. He then asked, with a somewhat suspicious smile, if that meant the two of them had been left alone there together, but she replied, "Only in your dreams," before immediately standing up to leave, saying that now that he was awake, she would be going. That left him completely confused.